Welcome to the ThunderCast, your Marshall Athletics podcast produced by the fans, for the fans. We're bringing you the thundering word on the thundering herd each and every week. So keep it right here. The ThunderCast is on the loose.
Hey, it's Russ and Jed back with your midweek edition of the ThunderCast. We're going to hit you with some 5 things. And around the herd, we're going to have a bit of a feature story about some about media days. But Jed, good to be back. How are you?
Yeah, doing excellent, man. I can't help myself that over the last few times we've hit record on these episodes, the music starts playing, and I find myself head bopping.
Mm-hmm.
I just that new intro music. I know it's not new now, but it's newer. Man, I'm digging it. I'm starting to really getting into it.
Same. Just as a recap, we for the first 5 seasons of this show, we had a different theme song. Loved that theme song. Felt like, it was kind of matched to us. When people heard that, they knew what was coming. But no matter, even though we paid to have the licensing fees, it kept getting flagged on everything. And we were in danger of, audio of shows not being posted, shows themselves not being posted on some platforms. So we said, you know what? Let's go back to the drawing board. And we got this one. I like it, man. It's growing on me. Wish we could have kept the other one, but I'm a big fan of this one too. I'm going to get a word from our sponsors at Leasure Oliver PLLC, Jed, and then we'll get right into it. Football is what we're talking about, so football is the commercial. If you've been hurt in a wreck, call the law firm of Leasure Oliver PLLC. Find them at 304carwreck.com.
I always like their the different commercials that they have for the different sports and everything. I really enjoy their commercials.
Yeah, we tried to do it up top notch. There was a collaboration with them. We made a couple of suggestions. They went and made all these different commercials for us, and it was really good. It's fitting. While you're here, no matter what platform you're on, hit like, subscribe, whatever that button is that will make sure it's free, but you're going to get notified every time we have new content. We got a lot coming out. KD and I have another episode of the Position Group Breakdown series that we are recording tonight. This is Wednesday, as Jed and I record, Wednesday evening. And after this, KD and I are going to record. And this show that you're watching or listening right now, it's going to be published Thursday morning. Well, Friday morning, we've got another episode of the Position Group Breakdown series. And believe it or not, Jed, we are through with 6 of them already after tonight. Crazy. So, yeah. All right, let's go ahead and get into this. And thanks to our sponsors at ignite.link. I got ready. I was tongue tied because of your shirt. I was getting ready to say layer 1, and that's the next segment. But because of our friends at ignite.link, we're going to hit you up with some 5 things. And now here are at least 5 things every herd fan needs to know this week. As always, brought to you by ignite.link, the Tri-State's premier IT management team. All right, Jed, the Chris Klein indoor practice facility got a much-needed replacement on their turf, and with that comes a new name. It's now going to be called Alex Lawrence Field, thanks to a donation by Kim Lawrence and family in honor of her late husband, Alex. Some people may be familiar with that name, and if you've been to the Jack and you've looked over left field, or you've seen it on ESPN Plus when a home run goes out there, it's the name of the clubhouse for Marshall baseball. So this family has now made 2 very significant donations over the last 3 years or so.
Man, how cool is that? Just so grateful for the folks that can do that kind of stuff. We talked about this with Steve last week. With his donation for the lights, and how cool and awesome that's going to be. And can't wait for football season to start so we can see that. But how important it is for us to have good turf, in a facility. So I looked this up real quick. while you were talking, and the indoor complex opened in 2014, so we are now 12 years removed from opening. And so it's always great when we get new facilities, and things like that, but then you've got to maintain them, and there's a large cost to that. And what a great benefit it is to have folks like this who donate and ease the athletic, it helps ease the athletic budget on some of these major expenses. So I think that's just so cool that they did that. Just very, very grateful for that.
Yeah. And they don't have just football practice in there, before the baseball and softball expansion, building the jack and building the softball kind of clubhouse and training facility behind it. Those sports were in there quite a bit more than they are now. I feel like they're still going to be in there at times, but track and field has their events in there. They practice in there. The indoor track is in there. But you just see all kinds of different athletes in there all the time. So very, very good multi-purpose facility. And to the Lawrence family and Kim Lawrence especially, our gratitude at the ThunderCast and as just Marshall fans in general goes out to you. But what a tremendous way to honor a loyal Marshall fan is to have a couple of facilities or parts of facilities named after them after they pass. All right, number 2, men's soccer signs, and here goes these names, man. I'm going to butcher them yet again.
I'm glad it's your turn.
we just trade off on these names that are foreign to us in the fact that we've never heard them. We've seen them in print, so we're left to guess. And what I say every time is, I never want to get anybody's name wrong. So reach out to us, tell us how it's supposed to be pronounced. But I'm going with Emre Hermansen from Fredrikstad, Norway, Jurij Obert from Frankfurt, Germany, and Eric Pop from Mississauga, Ontario, Canada. So keeping up with the international flair, Chris Grassi continues to reload, restock. We never say rebuild when we're talking about that year in, year out juggernaut at the NCAA level. But Jed, what is it that you and I always say when these people come in and there's not any info about them from overseas? What do we say about them?
And Grassi, we trust.
And Grassi, we trust. And it's the track record, right? He's going to continue to bring in these all-star caliber players, that are just year in, year out. They're a great team. They're a great mesh with the other teammates that we have. They complement each other. Different countries, different walks of life, different experiences, and then he manages them all together. So it's great.
Right. Yeah, it's awesome, man. And he's such a great coach, and the staff that he's built around, and the system that he's built, and the players that he's bringing in to fill into that system is great. I mean, and these guys that he's bringing in too are guys that typically have it's a little bit different than like in football. So a lot of times when you're bringing in somebody who plays football, they're either coming in as a high school recruit, or they're coming in from, through the transfer portal, having been at a D1 or FCS or whatever program. And with these type caliber players, a lot of times these guys are, they're participating in clubs in their respective countries that would be the equivalent of, someone coming in from the transfer portal from a university, having from a system of already at, playing soccer at a very, very high level. So that's why we see a lot of times when these international players come in, more times than not, they're seeing the field generally quickly. Their biggest piece is just fitting the system and understanding Grassi's system. And so generally these folks coming in, it's huge because they're plug and play. It's, that's very, very good for this. I know we bring in some high school recruits occasionally, but this, like you said, is a reload, rebuild. And so bringing in these players that already have very, very high level experience are going to come in and perform at a very high level. And again, we want to make another run to a national championship.
Yeah, but the trade-off with that experience, with that club level, international experience you're talking about, they have a learning curve when they come here of language barriers, and it's a melting pot on this team. From all over. You can't expect someone from Norway to be extremely fluent in Japanese, and vice versa, and German, and all this. So. It is. They come here and they have the cultural learning curve that they have, maybe the language barrier learning curve, and that goes on top of having to just normally getting any 20 people together on a team and having them play together. You're going to have that learning curve no matter what. So a little bit of a trade-off, but man, I don't know of anybody that does it better in the country than Chris Grass.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though Mr. Jed Horton over here is still undefeated against Chris Grassi. And
it's true.
Yeah. All right. Number 3, track and field picks up Antonio Smith, a transfer from Virginia Union. Looked like a hurdler, might do sprints as well, but the photo that they used had him in the hurdles. But originally from Chesapeake, West Virginia.
Hey, love getting West Virginia kids. And don't get me wrong, I love all of our student athletes. I love these athletes that come in from out of state and come in, but it's something special when we get, I'd consider Chesapeake pretty close to homegrown.
Sure.
If you're from the state, we consider you homegrown. Very cool to get that pickup and have Antonio here. So very cool. We've talked about track before. This is a program that's been on the rise year after year. We're seeing personal bests, we're seeing platform finishes, and we obviously we want to see this continue, and I think this is a good step in that direction, especially in an event that we want to elevate in. So this is great. Welcome to the herd.
Yeah, the thing about that program, people may look and say, well, our finish isn't that better at Sunbelt Conference, but what you're seeing is a gold medal here, a couple of all-time records in the Sunbelt here. What it is across the board, we've not caught up with the Arkansas states, and it used to be Texas State before they're gone, to where they have at every single meet, every single position, every single whatever you want to call it, jump, run, throw, they have people performing and scoring, and that's what's getting them up, is the consistent scoring. And then we'll have a bunch scoring, but then we'll have some events that we're not scoring in, and that's where we're dropping down. And that's the goal now, is you've got these spikes of last year, the triple jump and the high jump and the long jump, and we were just scoring very well, a threat to finish 1, 2, and 3 on the podium at the championships. And now it's, well, let's bring everybody up, rising tide, and it's been going that way. It's been moving that direction. Some of the transfers and recruits that have been coming in, it's their time now to step up and shine. So I'm very, very bullish on this team, and men's and women's, and seeing it continue to rise. All right. Baseball has a trio of newcomers as well for thing number 4, right-handed pitcher Aiden Seitz from Towson University. And he's originally from Martinsburg, keeping up that West Virginia flavor. Anthony Fernandez, a left-handed hitting outfielder. He transfers from St. Bonaventure. Talk about him real quick. He went on an absolute tear mid-season for the Bonnies. And at one time, his batting average was up at 370s and all that, but very high on base percentage, very high batting average from the left slot outfielder. Ended up at 330, I think was what he hit last year. Very, very respectable at the college level. And the next person we got another left-handed batter, center fielder Karsten Hansen from Lower Columbia College. He hit 378 last year. He had 42 walks last year. He plays center field and is fast, and he gets on base. What did we just lose in Evan Batone? A center fielder that gets on base, high batting average, fast. This is possibly your replacement for Evan Baton. But good pickups this week, getting another pitcher and 2 lefty outfielders, and looking to see a lot out of them.
Yeah, it looks good. Looks like really good pickups. We come off of a season that was kind of disappointing. A team that looked like they had the pieces to improve upon the year before. But you know what? Greg Beals has his work cut out for him. He knows how the last season went, and he's looking to replace these pieces that he lost and build a team that that can make a run in the Sun Belt. And people know this who follow college baseball. The Sun Belt is a juggernaut of a conference.
Juggernaut, absolutely. Yeah. If you look at the mid majors, you can't use that P4 and G6 thing in baseball. You can't use it in soccer. You can't use it in basketball. It's a football term that everybody throws around. But the Sun Belt is one of the premier conferences. And if they were a little bit better at the bottom level, again, it's kind of like what we were just talking about with track and field. If they were good top to bottom, this conference would be, right up there with any conference. And, Southern Miss and Coastal are usually the cream of the crop, but Troy and Louisiana are right up there too. And you've got to go through these programs that have just consistently been there. And let's face it, they're all south, where they've got a little bit better weather than we're having opening day, and everyone's trying to bring their thermos into the game because it's 29 degrees. And it's a great conference, man. And last year, I feel like if we would have not had the pitching injuries that we would have had, we would have been right there. We turned that corner, I felt, the year before, and then we had to take a couple of steps back due to injuries. And that's baseball, man. That's sports in general. But again, these additions should help with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Our fifth and final thing, Fan Day, has been set for August 9th at the Joan, 6 to 8 p.m. Jed, anyone that has gone to that before will know that it's not just all about football. Of course, it being at the football stadium, it's kind of the main event. But you'll see the soccer teams over there. You'll see the volleyball team over there. You'll see the basketball team there, track and field. Definitely all the fall sports are kind of there. And you will do meet and greets, sign or get signatures on posters and things like that. Maybe if you've got a shirt or a ball or something, you can get it by an individual athlete. They're going to have bounce house games, all kinds of cool stuff, things to sign up for. You don't want to miss it. Get to Fan Day. I hate that I'm going to be out of town. I'll actually be in Boston for a wedding that day. But August 9th at the Joan, 6 to 8 p.m., be there.
Yeah, always a great time, and take the time to go. It's a great event. It's a great, just like you said, opportunity to kind of kind of mingle with the players, and especially in this day and age of transfer portal. And we just talked about 3 international players coming in for the soccer team and things like that. It's a great way to build that name recognition and the faces and get to know the players a little bit so you could root them on. They chose to come to Marshall. We recruited them, chose to come to Marshall to play for the upcoming season. And, we want to be able to put our support behind them and, feel connected to the programs. So I think it's a wonderful, great way to feel connected. Kids absolutely love it. They get to meet, you get to meet with who they consider superstars. That's, we've, we don't have a professional team, obviously, in Huntington. So, Brad Smith talked about this. This is our professional team, right? This sure is what we have Marshall. And, and we have football players who go to the NFL. We have soccer players that played a very, very high level. We've got several guys from the basketball team previously that are playing in the G League and getting their stabs at the NBA. And, so these are some really cool student athletes who, these kids really, really look up to and aspire to be like. So if you have the opportunity, especially if you have kids, go to this. It's a really, really great time.
Yeah, and if you don't have kids, adults love it just as much or
give it away.
maybe more than the kids.
Right.
But definitely get there. Again, 6 to 8 p.m., August 9th at the Jones. It's always great that Marshall puts this on. It's free for the fans to come and do and just helps you get closer to these programs. Good reward. No reason you can't be there unless you're in Boston for a wedding. All right. Jed, that does it. And thanks again to ignite.link for this week. 5 things every herd fan needs to know this week.
Yeah. Really great 5 things, Russ. But for this week, we've had some around the herd, and then we've had some weeks with not around the herd, but we have around the herd this week.
Mm-hmm.
And let's get a word from Layer 1 Solutions, and we'll dive right in.
And now, Layer 1 Solutions, your experts in business connectivity infrastructure, takes you around the herd.
So unless you've been living under a rock, we've got Sunbelt Media Days, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of our feature here for Around the Herd. Just another, thing to let us know. You mentioned before, we're already 6 position groups down with the position group breakdown. Now we have Sunbelt Media Days. The clock is ticking down to the start of football season. And man, I'm really excited. I know there's a lot of folks really excited to get football season started, and Sunbelt Media Days is kind of one of those notches of, okay, here we're now getting started. So we're going to talk about a couple of things from today, and we're going to start with the Sunbelt Football Preseason Coaches Poll. All right, so the Preseason Coaches Poll has Marshall 3rd in the East this year with 0 first place votes.
Yeah, so Tony Gibson did not vote for Marshall right away. That's one of the things that everyone always wonders is, do these coaches vote for themselves? One year, I can't remember who it was, but they finished 7th, and I think that in the division, and they still got a first place vote. And you're like, all right, it's got to be the team, But you always wonder, are the coaches allowed to vote for themselves or their own team? But Coach Gibson, no one voted for Marshall. However, the reason we bring that up, East Division is led by James Madison, 94 points overall, 11 out of 14 first place votes. And that means that they're only 4 points shy. Those other 3 votes had to be 2 second place and 1 third place. So everyone in the conference, East and West, is expecting James Madison to still be on top. Second place, 73 points with a first place vote, is Old Dominion. Marshall, third place, was 67, not far behind them, with 0 first place votes. And then 4th and 5th both had a first place vote. Georgia Southern, 53 points, way behind the herd, but still had a first place vote. And Coastal Carolina all the way down at 45 points with a first place vote. So if one of those teams actually votes for Marshall, the gap would be even bigger. But a lot of respect for Marshall. We saw it at Sunbelt Media Days today. The conference was very high on them. The reporters covering it were very high on them. And that just goes to show you that Marshall finished with more second and third place votes than a lot of these other teams. So respect coming Marshall's way. You can't always throw anything into this. It's coaches making a vote. And again, Georgia Southern and Coastal Carolina got one. Over in the West, Southern Miss got one. And they're totally rebuilding again. So a lot of stock in it? No. Respect coming in third? Yeah, I think it's warranted. So I'm kind of happy with it.
Well, and it goes to, to what you and KD have been talking about in some of these position group breakdowns is, what Tony Gibson and his staff has put together with this team. You've got an established quarterback with, CDRW, and we're going to, talk about him hopefully here in just a second. And, with what he brings to the table, with what we've brought in offensively, and what we're doing, like there's definitely talent. There's been some good recruiting. The established coach in year 2, instead of year 1.
Mhm.
I think what this signals is, I'm with you. I don't think there's much stock in the rankings, but especially with a JMU getting as many first place votes as they did, but as much as it signals the respect, and the respect that we're getting for the amount of talent that we have, and I think the ceiling and potential for this Herd team is pretty high. So like the respect there. Like I said before, CDRW, I said hopefully. That's funny. We are going to talk about him, not hopefully talk about him. We are going to talk about him because he's the next thing I want to talk about. CDRW has been named the Sun Belt Conference Preseason Offensive Player of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
Gut reaction on that, Russ?
A lot of respect going his way, and I'm going to talk more about when we get to the bullet point talking about the media day recap from earlier today, because he was there and he talked, and I want to talk about some of the things he talked about. But one of two, if I'm going to get this correct, one of two quarterbacks in the country that returned with 2,000 plus passing yards and 600 plus rushing yards. So that kind of tells you the guy's pretty talented and did pretty good. But a lot of the quarterbacks in the Sun Belt Conference, they're starting anew with a new team because P4 came and poached the ones that everyone was expecting to do well, that did well last year. Well, they came and said, let's throw a bag at these guys. Well, Carlos Del Rio Wilson stayed. He wanted to buy in. He mentioned that a little bit today, but he's here for Marshall. He's here for Tony Gibson. He's here for the fans of Marshall. And everyone else has kind of been on notice that, hey, this guy's coming back. We're in trouble. And I think the coaches doing this, putting him there, show him that respect, but also a little bit of that fear of, man, I don't want to face this guy.
Yeah. Well, it's just to cover his stats real quick. You said over 2,000, he had 2,043 passing yards, 17 passing touchdowns, 660 rushing yards, 6 rushing touchdowns, 2,700. So it was 2,700, over 2,700 total offensive yards, 23 total touchdowns. So it's
only
this is
5 interceptions, 67% completion percentage, by the way.
And he didn't start the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
You've got a guy that, and as the season progressed, he did start, dealing with a little bit of some injuries with the fact that, because of his running game and just, getting some abuse there. He, even with that, I mean, it was, his ceiling was made known that he has a very high ceiling. And I think this year is going to be, I think he's going to do very, very well.
So more on that in a minute, more on him not starting the first couple of games in a minute. Let's move on to the next thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So Marshall's preseason all Sun Belt collections. All right, so we had SBC preseason first team, of course, quarterback Carlos Del Rio Wilson, offensive line Jalen Slappy, and offensive line Tariq Montgomery. And then tight end Toby Payne, Adrian Norton, wide receiver, and defensive back Deontay Smith. And then second team defensive line. Datewan. I'm sorry, Datewan Smith. Second team defensive line Braden Ward, and linebacker Javay Gilmore.
Yeah. So ended up with 9 on there. Very, very respectable. But what I want to say, this has happened every single year that we've covered this since we started the podcast. So 22, 23, 24, 25, and now 26. This is the 5th time we've covered Sunbelt Media Days. And by far, I have noticed the trend is that these coaches, when they're putting these lists together, almost unanimously, it's players that returned to the team from the previous year. And that's not taking anything away from these guys, because each and every one of them are deserving, but they're kind of leaving out some of your newcomers that are coming in and could make an impact. So first team or second team is usually very, very heavy with players that are returning to their team, or if they transferred in conference. But players they played against and coached against in conference last year dominate the first team and the second team. You could bring in a stud from somewhere else, and they don't get the preseason recognition, but they'll get the postseason recognition, if that makes sense. But Slappy and Montgomery, anchors on the line. Really cool thing came out. Mrs. Slappy put a post out earlier, maybe today, maybe yesterday, but she was talking about Jalen and Tariq, how they were roommates as freshmen, and here they've stayed the entire time. They could have left, and both of them graduated. Now they're both working on their masters, and both of them are on schedule to get that masters this spring coming up. So just really super cool. CDRW, we already talked about. Toby Payne, there was no chance anybody was going to get first team over him at tight end. And we're very high on Adrian Norton. Wody got a lot. He was there with CDRW and Coach Gibson today. He got a lot of press. We heard from him a lot. He got a lot of respect put on his name. And then two people that we're high on second team defense, Braden Ward, JaVale Gilmore, both of those, when we talk about them, we expect them to just ball out this year.
And then we forgot on the list, Xavier Turner Bradshaw was the 9th for second.
Oh, is he not on there?
Not on there. We had
I did not put him on there. I'm sorry. On the notes, I did not put him on there. But yeah, he's on for special teams for returner.
Yeah, great list. 9, the most of any team, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so. And we had, again, 5 on offense, if that on the first team for offense. So if that doesn't tell you kind of what we're working with here, our offense is very highly respected around the league. But I think that it's going to be a lot more respected after these games are played, because Coach Gibson today and Coach Carlos Del Rio Wilson today both had some very highly interesting things to talk about with this offense.
Yeah. So I was able to watch that today, and just kind of listen to Carlos talk a little bit about it. So let's go ahead and just jump over to our last point here, which is Sunbelt Media Day, right? Let's do just kind of do a Media Day recap overall. So if you want to go ahead and start, and then we can talk about different things, observations that we had.
So first off, if you want to watch this, you can do so on ESPN Plus. If you have that platform, go over there. It will no longer be under the live, because if you're watching this today or listening to this today and you say, well, let's go over there, they're going to be live showing you the West Division. The East was earlier today, Wednesday, as we're recording. But there were a couple of different things. There was one that you could select that was podium, and that's where they're bringing up the coaches and 2 players, one from offense, one from defense, and bringing them up to answer questions from the press. Coach gives a speech and then opens it up to questions. The other one, they had an AM session and then they had a PM session. So if you go to the AM session and you go to drag the timer at the bottom to about 2 hours and 10 minutes, 2 hours and 11 minutes, somewhere in there, you'll see the studio version of where Coach Gibson sat down with and went way in depth on every position group. And then they had another reporter talking to Carlos and Wody. And one of the things that leaped out at me, I actually made a post about this, but Coach Gibson was talking about Carlos Del Rio Wilson, because he was asked about, quarterback and him returning and everything. And he said, he actually didn't even play the first couple of games. And he said, that's a mistake on me. He said, it's my fault. And we could have won maybe a couple more games, had we started with him at the season. So he explained why as well. And I thought that it's not only refreshing that you hear coaches take responsibility and say that is 100% my fault, but then he went on to explain why he made that decision. And I found that fascinating. And if he told this story last year, if he told it this year, I haven't heard it before. If he did, I've forgotten about it. But he said that they went with full contact, and Carlos Del Rio Wilson separated himself from everybody else. And then when it gets down to the fall, and definitely the last couple of weeks leading up, no contact on the quarterback whatsoever. And he said Carlos Del Rio Wilson just did not look good. He did not look how he had looked before. Things just were not doing what he thought they should be doing compared to what he was at before. And of course, that's where Ja'Kai Long moved up to be first on the depth chart and started versus Georgia. And then in the second game, we had a different quarterback. Zion Turner started at Missouri State. So he said, put that all on me. Once we went into live action, that's where Carlos Del Rio Wilson excelled. And I thought that was great, that he gave that answer and everything. Carlos Del Rio Wilson said that he ran too much last year. He featured his legs, but he wanted to feature passing a lot more. And he even mentioned how much he wanted to pass was, I already looked it up, the Sun Belt record for passing yards in the season, and it was like 4381 or something like that, 4308, somewhere around there, but definitely 4,300 yards. And he was like, so that's the goal. I want to do that. I want to have the most passing yards in the history of the Sun Belt Conference for a single season. And if that doesn't tell you a lot about maybe what this offense is planning, maybe, some of the complaints that fans had last year of, man, we're rushing the quarterback too much. We bring in a returning unit of Toby Payne, Adrian Norton, DeAndre Tamarez, Xavier Turner Bradshaw, all at receiving positions. And then you're bringing in Christian Hamilton, Chris Culliver, Owen Sweeney, who wasn't even mentioned that much today. And then some of these other guys that were here last year, but didn't really get the playing time, like Deuce White and things like that you could see. Plus the passing out of the backfield. We just did the running back breakdown and talked about that position group, about how talented they are at catching the ball out of the backfield. Some of them, they are known for that. So I really expect us to be airing it out a lot this year, and I really expect us to be an explosive offense. And I'll let you talk a little bit more, but I just wanted to start with that nugget out of Gibson and that nugget out of Carlos Del Rio Wilson.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll kind of bounce off of that, and then I'll just toss it back to you for some additional thoughts that you have. But one of the things that I really wanted to talk about was during the podium session, and he was asked a question, something along the lines of, what kind of legacy do you want to be? Something like, what kind of legacy do you want to leave at Marshall or be remembered for at Marshall and things like that? And he goes, like what do you want to be remembered for? He's like, how do you want to be remembered? He's like, well, I want to be remembered like Chad Pennington and Byron Leftwich. Yeah. And it's like, wow, what a standard to set yourself at. And I think that wasn't in the way he said it, wasn't out of arrogance. It was said out of, that's the standard. And that's what I want to be. And that's what I set my goal to. And I thought that was just a really cool answer, that's what he wants to be, kind of his legacy here as a quarterback at Marshall University is he wants to be remembered in the top echelon of quarterbacks, and that's his goal. And man, there's just we saw it last year. There's just something special about this guy, and man, I'm hyped to get the season underway, because I think he's gonna do some special things, and I think the preseason accolades are kind of a nod to that he's got a very, very high ceiling and very, very very cool things that could happen this year.
Yeah, and they kind of led him into that. It wasn't a question that he just did not make that statement. The question was, where do you hope to be considered amongst the
Yeah.
quarterbacks, at Marshall University by the time you leave here? Well, I mean, he's put on the spot at that point. It wasn't like he came down there and was like, I'm going to come out and just make a statement
Right.
and say, I want to be better than Chad Pennington or Byron Leftwich. It
Yeah.
wasn't out of arrogance or anything. It's out of
Yeah.
confidence and hope. And shouldn't you want that out of the leader of your offense, the leader of your team, the quarterback? You do. You want that person. You don't want him to go, I don't know, man. I hope they just remembered that I came and played and, we barely won half of our games. No, you want a guy that's saying, I want to be the best,
Yeah.
So a couple other things. Coach really went into in depth, something that we said on this show quite a bit last year and for the season recap, that it was that defensive backfield, that position group as a whole that let him down with the explosive plays. Coach said that when he was on our show. All those chunk plays that they gave up and everything, he said they really put a high stress on the cornerback position and the ones that they brought in. He named them Braden Hall, Charles McCarthy's, and who is it? Eddie? Man, I'm blanking. I'm sorry. I thought it was Eddie. I don't know. I'll get it here in a second. But he is really high on them. He's really high on bringing in Terrente Hinton for help there with Wody and JPL, as he calls him, Josh Pereira Lewis, back at the nickel, and said we are going to be drastically improved at the defensive backfield position. And he covered linebackers. He covered defensive ends or defensive line. Kind of everything that we're echoing right now and saying right now on the position group breakdowns. Coach was just kind of confirming exactly what we have been saying. Not that we're saying we're some great prognosticators. We're just saying we're seeing what is actually there. That this is going to be an improved defense. And Brad Lambert, he went into all kinds of stuff about Brad and the history and, Dean Hood and Chip West and their history on defense. Gibson said, I wanted to give Brad Lambert the autonomy to hire his own position coaches. And he said, this is his defense. I want to make it his defense. He also said, I messed up by this and being the 3-3-5 and stuff. So he's admitting his baby last year was ugly and he's turned it over to somebody else. This is a coach, man, that is wanting to grow, that is wanting to do everything to win right now. And he's not giving you coach speech about it. He's like, I screwed up. I didn't do well. So I promise you we're going to do better. And I think that's what you want out of a head coach too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things he kept talking about, from the podium side was, talking about telling the truth. Mm-hmm. And he said, after every single practice, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to talk you up, and things like that. I'm going to tell you the truth. And he says, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to tell my staff the truth. And then at the end of that, he said, I'm going to tell myself the truth. And having a coach that who's willing to give it to you straight while also recognizing that he also can make mistakes and understands that, hey, I have enough self-awareness to know that when I made these decisions, I messed up. And so so now it's on me, the accountability. And he talked about accountability. The accountability side is now that's on me to now make the necessary changes. Now that I'm aware that I've made a mistake, I have to make the changes so we can correct that mistake and move forward and be better.
That's
be better as a program, be better as a team, an individual player, a coach, coaching staff. Those are the qualities of a very good coach, a very good leader who can do those things. And so I was really just blown away. And he's talked this, he's already done this before, but I was just really blown away the way he communicated that And those two guys sitting right next to him are like, yeah, you know, they're bought in. They're bought into the system. They're bought into Coach Gibson. And that's really that's a very, very unique cultural thing that I've been very, very impressed with, and very interested to see how it plays out this year versus last year, for sure.
So very short recap from me, and then you can recap however you want. The Coach Gibson said, and Carlos Del Rio Wilson said, and Wody said, all three of them, that we're going to have an explosive offense. We're going to be drastically improved on defense, especially at defensive backs. And we are not going to be running Carlos Del Rio Wilson as much. So some of the things that we complained about last year, and Coach said that, you know, that these losses last year, that, you know, he took the blame for 3, maybe 4 losses, saying we should have been 8, maybe 9-win team. So all the things that we had as complaints last year, even though, you know, we're not saying that's all we did was complain. I'm saying the fan base as a whole said, man, you know, if this would have went different, you know, I wish we would do this different. So your concerns going into this year, it sounds like they're not going to be that big a concern, because we're not going to be running the quarterback as much as we did last year. We're not going to be giving up as many chunk plays on the defense. We're not going to be in a 3-3-5 as often. All those things that were concerns and voiced, kind of put them to rest. And of course, that's only behind a microphone. You still got to do it on the field, but it gives me a lot of confidence in this team going into this season. So do yourself a favor, go to ESPN Plus, watch what Jed and I were talking about, watch the podium session. It's at 3:30 p.m., but I don't know where that would have fallen, maybe 4:30 on the slider, somewhere around there. But watch that. Watch the studio version that'll say morning instead of PM, and that will put your mind at ease. And it's just a really good long interview, and hearing words from all three of those guys.
Yeah, and I'm just going to second that, and I really don't have much more to add other than the fact that I think that one of the things as we get closer and closer to the season is I am seeing the potential for a very well put together team. And if they can get the game day execution piece right, you know, I think the personnel pieces are there. If we can get the game day execution piece right, which I know, again, Coach Gibson was very upfront about, he took the blame for some of those losses and put him squarely on his shoulders. You know, so I expect, you know, they went and they recruited, they got, you know, they made all of these changes, which I would assume then that they've now grown in how they will approach game day and how the game, as the game unfolds, you know, what the process is and how they're going to adjust and what, you know, their game plan for those games, you know. So the game day execution piece, we should see improvement on that as well. You know, when there were coaching blunders, right? I think that they will see improvement in there. And if we can put all those pieces together, I'm not saying we're going to have a special season, but you have the making of a special season potentially. And I'm really bullish on this team this year, and really excited for this coach and this team and this staff. So, but and just I love any content that we can get, and this content's kind of, you know, whetting the appetite, Russ, man. I'm getting excited for football.
It is. And thanks again for Layer One Solutions for taking us around the herd. And Jed, with that, I'm going to take us out of here and say, whether you see us at the Jack, whether you see us at the Dot, or whether you see us coming so close, it's almost here. Whether you see us at the Joan, no matter where you see us, we're going to be saying, go herd. It's the ThunderCast, and we'll see you next week.